For 6 years, I kept your father's online learning platform stable for 300,000 students. And now you're firing me because your influencer friend needs a title. I asked the new chief executive officer. Turn in your badge, she said, her voice dripping with the kind of toxic positivity that preceded either a cult recruitment or a massive layoff. I did. Then I added, calmly, you have 30 minutes before every exam starts kicking students out. Tell your board I said good luck. The clock was counting down, but the time bomb had been ticking long before that meeting. I am Shane, a 35-year-old principal systems engineer, and for years, I was the invisible backbone of Scholar Sync. I was the person staring at cascading style sheets and server load balancers for 6 years, ensuring that a kid in rural Nebraska didn't get booted out of his advanced placement calculus final because a database hiccuped. I am the janitor of the internet's plumbing, and I probably smelled like stale coffee and dry shampoo. That was my truth. The moment I saw the new organizational chart, I knew the platform was doomed. It wasn't a dense, technical portable document format file. It was a mood-curated Pinterest board sent via a Slack channel named #New Beginning Sparkles. My cynicism, usually reserved for poorly optimized queries, went into overdrive. My job requires logic and silence. This new era was clearly driven by vibes. Portable document format file. It was a mood-curated Pinterest board sent via a Slack channel named #New Beginning Sparkles. My cynicism, usually reserved for poorly optimized queries, went into overdrive. My job requires logic and silence. This new era was clearly driven by vibes. I sat there in the glass-walled conference room, technically a Zoom meeting that cost more per minute than my car payment, watching Avery, the founder's daughter and freshly minted chief executive officer. Avery looked like she had been manufactured in a lab funded by Sephora and Daddy's trust fund. She was 26, had never written a line of code in her life, and spoke exclusively in LinkedIn buzzwords that sounded like they were generated by a stroke victim on ChatGPT. Shane Hun, she said, her voice a polished monotone. We'll love what you do with the computer beep boop stuff. Really, it's so structural, but we need sparkle. We need vision. Beside her on the screen, holding a matcha-latte that probably cost $12, was Kinsley. Kinsley was Avery's sorority sister. Kinsley's previous work experience included running a frantic Instagram account for a failed bikini startup and getting banned from Uber for vomiting in a Tesla. Meet your new chief technology visionary, Avery announced, clapping her hands like a seal that just swallowed a Xanax. Kinsley is going to revolutionize the user experience. She's going to make studying aesthetic. I stared at the camera. My eye twitched. I felt the familiar burn of acid reflux, my body's way of telling me I was in the presence of overwhelming corporate stupidity. I was the one who missed holidays staring at logs, struggling with the fear of irrelevance, knowing that the only thing keeping this company afloat was my invisible, critical labor. And here was the ultimate threat to that labor, personified by two women who thought the internet was a magical, unbreakable cloud. Chief Technology Visionary, I repeated, my voice flat. Does that mean she knows Python, Ruby, structured query language, or are we talking about the snake, the gem, and the sequel to a movie she didn't watch? Kinsley giggled. It was a sound like glass breaking in a dishwasher. Oh, Shane, you're so retro. I don't code. I ID it. I'm going to curate the vibe of the interface. We're thinking millennial pink for the error messages. Make failure feel inclusive, you know. I muted my microphone to scream silently. This wasn't just professional annoyance. This was an existential threat to hundreds of thousands of students. ScholarSync isn't a social media platform. It's an exam platform. It handles high-stakes testing for universities across the country. If the system lags for 3 seconds, students panic. If it crashes, degrees are delayed, scholarships are lost, and my inbox turns into a crime scene of angry faculty emails. We were 3 weeks away from the gauntlet, the 10-day period of midterms where traffic spikes by 400%. The servers run hotter than a stolen catalytic converter. It requires precision, silence, and a total freeze on new code deployment. And they had just hired a woman whose primary skill set was finding the best lighting for a selfie to run the entire technology department. My cynicism was justified. My fear of irrelevance, however, was about to be proven moot. The rage that had built up in the Zoom meeting that afternoon was corrosive. It wasn't the kind of rage that made you yell. It was the kind that made you cold and meticulous. I spent the evening doing what I always did after a stressful day, monitoring the system. Insomnia hit me like a freight train of exhaustion and adrenaline, and I retreated to my home office. My home office was a converted closet filled with humming monitors and the ghost of my social life. I watched the real-time logs scroll across the screen, the server hum providing a low, mechanical lullaby. It was the sound of order, the sound of things working exactly as they were supposed to. For 6 years, this sound had been my anchor. But then, a line of angry red text scrolled past my peripheral vision. Alert. Unauthorized deployment to production. User admin Kinsley. My blood turned into liquid nitrogen. Production. You do not touch production on a Tuesday night. You do not touch production ever without 3 tickets, a security sign-off, and a blood sacrifice to the code gods. This wasn't staging, the safe sandbox where code was tested. This was the active server, currently handling thousands of students. My fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard like I was playing a concerto of panic. I tapped into the logs and traced the command. Kinsley, or more likely some poor, unpaid intern she'd hired off Craigslist, had bypassed the staging environment entirely. They were pushing a front-end update live to the system. They were making aesthetic changes on the surgical table. I pulled up the code differential. It wasn't a security patch. It wasn't a bug fix. It was a confetti animation. You have got to be kidding me. I whispered to the empty room. They added a script that made digital confetti explode across the screen whenever a student clicked. Submit. The intent was clear, make failure feel inclusive. The execution was appalling. The script was bloated. It was pulling assets from a third-party server hosted in what looked like a basement in Belarus. It was unoptimized. It was a ticking time bomb built of sparkles. I calculated the impact. Every time that confetti animation triggered, it locked the browser thread for 400 milliseconds. 400 milliseconds does not sound like much, but multiply that by 50,000 concurrent students submitting exams at 10 in the morning on the East Coast. That is not a lag. That is a distributed denial of service attack on our own infrastructure, executed by our chief technology visionary. I knew I could fix this. I reached for the revert button. My finger hovered over the key, a worn piece of plastic that had saved this company from financial and academic ruin dozens of times. I could roll back the update, send a polite email explaining why we do not push confetti code during peak hours, and save the day, just as I had for 6 years. I am the fixer. I am the reliability engineer. I am the one who ensures the ship doesn't sink while the captain is drunk at the buffet. But then, I remembered Avery's voice. We need sparkle. You're too negative, too structural. Her tone dismissed my entire career as a personality flaw. I looked at the code again. It was sloppy, dangerous, and incredibly stupid. It was exactly what they had asked for when they hired Kinsley to do it. They didn't want reliability, they wanted engagement. This broken code, this digital cancer, was the embodiment of their vision. They wanted a Tesla, even if it was guaranteed to catch fire. I pulled my hand back from the revert button. I wasn't going to stop them. Not yet. If they wanted to drive the car off the cliff 3 weeks before the gauntlet, I wasn't going to take the keys. I was just going to make sure I was wearing a parachute when we went over the edge. I opened a new ticket in my private encrypted backlog. I labeled the folder Doomsday and wrote a single, cold professional comment. Observation confetti script introduces critical latency stack overflow. Estimated time to total system paralysis, 21 days under peak gauntlet traffic. Action taken none. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking under the weight of my exhaustion and the gravity of my decision. The blue light of the monitors washed over me. I had allowed the time bomb to remain armed. The familiar hum of the servers was no longer a lullaby of order. It was the low thrum of impending doom. I had no idea just how fast they were planning to accelerate my departure. The notification on my phone lit up the dark room. A calendar invite for tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Subject performance review role alignment. Sent by Avery, Chief Executive Officer. My stomach dropped. In corporate speak, role alignment is Latin for we found someone cheaper who agrees with us. I looked at the unauthorized confetti code still pulsing in the logs, a neon-colored cancer in my clean system. They weren't just going to ruin the platform. They were going to blame me for the wreckage on the way out. I lit a stick of incense, my only vice since I do not smoke, and watched the smoke curl around the monitor stand. Okay, Avery's, I murmured to the empty room. You want a show? Let's see how much sparkle you have when the lights go out. The morning came too fast. The performance review role alignment was slated for 8 o'clock, and I walked into the conference room with the cold, settled certainty of a man walking into his own professional execution. The room itself was a glass fishbowl floor, to ceiling windows facing the open plan office, ensuring that everyone could watch your execution like it was a matinee showing of the Hunger Games. Avery sat at the head of the table, flanked by Linda, the Human Resources Director, and Kinsley, who was scrolling through TikTok with the volume on low. The tiny, tinny sound of a viral dance track provided the soundtrack to my professional demise. Linda, true to form, had the personality of a wet cardigan. She was the corporate embodiment of pity. Shane, thanks for making time. Avery started, flashing a smile that didn't reach her dead, shark-like eyes. She clasped her hands on the table. We've been doing a lot of soul-searching about the direction of Scholar Sync. Soul-searching, I repeated, keeping my face neutral. Is that what we're calling the unauthorized code push to production last night? Avery blinked, caught off guard. Kinsley stopped scrolling. Oh, that. Kinsley chimed in, waving a manicured hand. That was just a little, flair. The platform felt so sterile. We wanted to add some joy to the submission process. Did you see the confetti? It's cute, right? That creates a 400 millisecond latency spike per user. I said, my voice steady, professional. If 10,000 students submit at once, the database lock wait timeout will trigger. The system will crash. It's not cute, Kinsley. It's a math problem. Avery sighed, a long dramatic exhalation of air that signaled I was being difficult. See, this is exactly what we wanted to talk about, Shane. This energy, it's very blocker-focused. We need enablers. Linda, the Human Resources Director, slid a piece of paper across the table. It was face down, the universal sign of a severance package. Shane, Linda said, her voice soft and pitying, the way you talk to a dog you're about to put down. The company is moving toward a more agile, brand-forward identity. We feel your skill set is legacy. You're incredible at maintenance, really. But Kinsley's team is going to handle the tech vision moving forward. We're bringing in some developers from her agency who understand the aesthetic requirements. I looked at the paper but didn't flip it over. I looked at Avery. You're firing me 3 weeks before the gauntlet. We're not firing you, Avery corrected quickly. We're eliminating your position due to redundancy. Kinsley is effectively the Chief Technology Officer now, and we don't need a reliability engineer when the new vision is all about flow. Flow, I said. Flow stops when the servers catch fire, right? Who is going to manage the load balancers? Who is going to patch the structured query language injection vulnerabilities? Who is going to ensure the exam timers don't desynchronize? Avery shrugged dismissively. The cloud handles that stuff. I stared at her. It was a stare so profound, so filled with the realization that I was speaking to a person who thought the cloud was a literal magical nebula that solved problems, that I momentarily lost the ability to speak English. The cloud, I said slowly, emphasizing each syllable, is just other people's computers. And right now, those computers are managed by me. If I leave, there is no one steering the ship. We'll figure it out. Avery chirped, standing up to signal the meeting was over. We have a transition plan. You'll have access until Friday at 5 post-meridian to hand over your credentials and document your whatever it is you do. We're giving you a very generous severance. 2 weeks. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I've been here 6 years. I built the architecture that pays for your matcha-lats. Standard policy, Linda murmured, looking at her shoes, refusing eye contact. I looked at the three of them, Avery, the nepotism baby playing chief executive officer, Kinsley, the influencer cosplaying as an engineer, and Linda, the institutional coward. That was the sentence that snapped the final tether of my conscience. Avery's previous condescending line about my value. When you fix a bug, well, nobody really cares, do you? That sentiment solidified my resolve. I thought about the 250,000 students. I cared. My chest ached with the weight of that responsibility. And that's why I had to do this. A cold calm washed over me. It was the same calm I felt when a server rack overheated or a database corrupted. Panic is for amateurs. Professionals assess the damage, isolate the variable, and execute a solution. Right now, the variable was them. Okay, I said. I reached out and took the paper. Friday at 5 post-meridian. Got it. Great. Avery beamed. Oh, and Shane. Try to be a little more collaborative during the handover. We want good vibes only. I walked out of the fishbowl. I could feel the eyes of the junior developers on me. They knew. They saw the body language. They knew the only person who knew how the encryption keys were rotated was walking the plank. My identity as a cynical protector had just been brutally rejected, forcing my evolution into a calculating saboteur. The path was clear. If they wanted good vibes, they would get the vibes they deserved. I went back to my desk, the severance paperwork feeling cold and heavy in my hand. Friday at 5 post-meridian. That gave me 48 hours. They wanted me to document what I did. Oh, I would document it. I would document exactly how fragile their little kingdom was, and exactly what would happen when the scaffolding I provided was removed. I sat down and unlocked my terminal. User Shane, admin access level root. I checked the current system status. Uptime 412 days. That number was a badge of honor, a silent testimony to 6 years of invisible labor. It was about to become a tombstone. My next few hours were a blur of malicious compliance and architectural sabotage. I wasn't destroying the system. I am an engineer. I don't break things. I build them to function exactly as instructed. And if the instructions were to let the influencers run the asylum, then I was obligated to ensure the asylum functioned exactly as an influencer run asylum should. First, the documentation. I opened a new file, handoffprocedures.txt. I typed the first line, step 1 pray. Then I minimized that and opened the deep system diagnostics. The confetti script Kinsley had pushed was already causing minor memory leaks. I could see the random access memory usage creeping up pixel by pixel. I could have fixed it right then with a simple command, git revert. Instead, I found the scheduler. This process was the digital janitor that kept the system from choking on its own garbage by regularly clearing the memory cache. It was set to run every hour. I changed the setting interval to never. I saved the change. It wouldn't be noticed today. It wouldn't be noticed tomorrow. But once the traffic hit during the gauntlet, the server would eat its own memory until it suffocated. That was just petty, though. I needed something absolute. I needed a kill switch that they would beg me to turn off. I looked at the calendar. Exam started Monday morning at 9 post-meridian. My access was cut Friday at 5 post-meridian. I had a narrow window. I cracked my knuckles. Good vibes only, I whispered. You got it? Boss. I navigated to the deepest, darkest corner of the legacy codebase, a module I wrote 4 years ago called Emergency Exam Halt.js. It was a safety feature. The nuclear option I built to instantly freeze all active exams in the event of a catastrophic data breach or fire, preserving data integrity. It had never been used. I cloned the script and renamed the clone vibe check protocol. I began to modify the trigger conditions. Deeply nested within the logic, wrapped in layers of obscure variable names that Kinsley wouldn't understand even if she knew how to open the file. I set the core trigger, verify a specific digital signature. If user Shane admin is not active in the employee database, then execute vibe check protocol. But the lockout couldn't be instant. They would blame me immediately. It had to look like a system failure caused by incompetence, not malice. I added a time delay 72 hours from the last valid login. Friday at 5 post-meridian plus 70. 2 hours meant Monday evening, right in the middle of the first day of finals. I added one more layer, a failsafe variable var stupid branding override equals true. I buried this variable inside the cascading style sheet file for the new confetti animation Kinsley loved so much. The vibe check protocol was designed to check for this confetti. As long as that bloated, broken code was running, my kill switch was armed. If they had simply reverted the bad code, if they had done the one thing a competent team would do, the kill switch would deactivate. It was a test. I was betting my entire severance package that they weren't smart enough to fix Kinsley's mistake. Next, the alerts. I looked at the command line for the data center's remote management tool. Usually, if a server overheats or fails, an SMS text is sent to the on-call engineer, which was me. I deleted my number. I entered the new numbers, Avery's cell phone and Kinsley's cell phone. And just for good measure, I set the alert sound to a WAV file I uploaded. It wasn't a standard beep. It was a recording of a screaming goat I found on a sound effect site. The system went down at 3 in the morning, and the chief executive officer and her visionary bestie were going to be woken up by a goat screaming at maximum volume every 30 seconds until the alert was acknowledged. I felt a small, dark smile tug at the corner of my mouth. Documentation complete, I whispered. Before logging off for the night, I saw Greg, a junior developer who was actually decent, sitting at his desk. He looked stressed and gave a small, sad wave. He knew I was getting the boot, and I knew he was about to inherit a nightmare. I opened a direct message to Greg. "Hey Greg," I typed. "If things get weird next week, check the legacy routing table. But don't fix it until they ask you to. Trust me. And update your LinkedIn." Sending that message was the most difficult part of the day. It was an admission of what I was doing, a tiny step away from my calculated rage and toward professional loyalty. It felt like a small act of vulnerability that went against my self-preservation, but I couldn't let the good guy get caught in the blast. I closed the laptop. 1 day left. The crossing was almost complete. I had built the bridge, rigged the explosives, and was now just waiting to walk across it and detonate it from the other side. Friday arrived with the grim inevitability of a dental appointment. The office vibe was manic casual. Everyone knew I was leaving, but nobody wanted to acknowledge the awkwardness, so they just smiled too hard and avoided eye contact, careful not to look at the departing corpse. At 2 post-meridian, Avery stopped by my desk. She was wearing a blazer that cost more than my first car and holding a tablet like it was a holy relic. "Shane," she chirped, leaning against my cubicle wall. "How's the wrap-up going?" "All the wires tucked away nicely. The documentation is on the shared drive," I said, not looking up from my screen as I finalized the hidden trigger logic. "I've listed the critical dependencies. I also flagged the latency issue with the confetti script again." Avery laughed, a dismissive airy sound. "Oh Shane, you and your latency. Kinsley says the metrics are fine. Engagement is up. People are staying on the submission page longer. They're staying longer because the page is frozen," I said, turning my chair to face her. "That's not engagement, Avery. That's frustration. That's a system struggling to breathe." Avery's smile faltered for a microsecond, then reassembled itself into a mask of pity. "Look, I know this is hard. You built a functional thing. It's cute. It's like a Toyota Camry. Reliable. Boring. We're building a Tesla. Tesla's catch fire," I noted. "We hope you understand," she continued, ignoring me, her gaze drifting over my shoulder. "You're brilliant in your own retro way, but the industry is changing. Branding matters. Kinsley has followers. She has a platform. When she tweets about an update, our stock price moves. When you fix a bug, well, nobody really cares, do they?" That was the moment again, hitting me with the same cold force as it had in the fishbowl room. Nobody really cares. The sentence that justified everything I had just done in the codebase. I reached for the server terminal one last time. I opened the message of the day file. This is a text file that only admins see when they log into the backend console, the command line interface that Kinsley and Avery would never touch. I typed in one final, desperate breadcrumb, a final test of character. "Warning, the load-bearing column has been removed. If you see confetti, you are already dead. Call me if you want to live. Consultant rate triple." I saved the file. They would never see it. They didn't know how to log into the console. They only used the pretty dashboard Kinsley's team built, the one that was currently lying to them about the system health. Kinsley sauntered over holding a bottle of cheap champagne. "Happy last day tea," popping bottles in the break room at 4:30. "You should come. No hard feelings. Right? I have a few last things to clean up," I said, looking at the champagne suite. "Probably gave you a headache just by looking at it." "You guys go ahead. Celebrate the vision. Sweet yourself," Kinsley said. She and Avery walked away chatting about fonts and affirmations, completely oblivious to the digital abyss I had just opened beneath them. At 4:55 post-meridian, I stood up. I packed my framed photo of my cat, my ergonomic mouse, my cactus. I took my badge out of my pocket. I walked to the security desk at the front. The guard, an older guy named Earl, who I'd shared coffee with for 6 years, looked genuinely sad. "Leaving us, Shan?" "Yep, moving on to greener pastures, Earl." Place won't run the same without you, he grunted. No? I said, handing him the badge. It really won't. I walked out the glass doors into the parking lot. The Colorado sun was bright and sharp. The air smelled like pine and impending doom. My emotional state was one of relief mixed with profound anticipation. The silence of disengagement was absolute. The gauntlet would begin soon and I would be watching. I got into my car. I didn't look back. My phone buzzed immediately. A notification from the generic support ticketing system, which I hadn't logged out of yet. Ticket 99901. Student reporting slow load times on practice exam. Priority low. It was starting. The memory leak from the confetti script was filling the bucket drop by drop. I turned off all notifications. I started the engine. Manifest that, I said. The quiet tension of the week had peaked. Now I simply had to wait for the blast. The weekend was surreal. For the first time in 6 years, my phone didn't vibrate with the phantom limb sensation of a server outage. I slept in on Saturday. I went to a farmer's market. I bought artisanal cheese. I felt like a normal human being, or at least a simulation of one. But the back of my brain was still running a background process, mentally calculating the server load. Saturday 2 post-meridian. Weekend study groups are logging in. Traffic is moderate. The memory leak from the confetti script is probably at 40%, eating up random access memory like Pac-Man. The vibe check protocol is dormant, waiting for my admin user status to be scrubbed on Monday. Sunday 8 post-meridian. The panic set is logging in. Students realizing they have exams tomorrow. Traffic spikes. The database is starting to sweat. I resisted the urge to check the public uniform resource locator. That was the rule: total severance. If I checked, I was involved. If I was involved, I was liable. I had to be a ghost watching from the sidelines. The anticipation was agonizing. Monday morning, 9 anti-meridian. The beginning of the gauntlet. I sat on my patio with a mug of coffee, watching the squirrels fight over a walnut. It was peaceful. My laptop sat closed on the table. I knew exactly what was happening inside the Scholar Sync headquarters right now. Avery was likely getting her second match a laddie. At 9 minutes past 9 anti-meridian, the first wave of East Coast students sat down for their 10 anti-meridian exams. At 15 minutes past 9 anti-meridian, the vibe check protocol woke up. The script I had written was designed to be subtle at first. It wouldn't crash the whole system. That's too easy to spot. Instead, it targeted the authorization token verification. Every 90 seconds, the script would randomly invalidate 5% of active session tokens. To the user, it looked like their internet blinked. The exam would pause and display. Connection lost. Reconnecting. Then it would reconnect. Then 90 seconds later, it would drop again and again and again. It was psychological torture. It was the digital equivalent of a water drip on the forehead. At 30 minutes past 9 anti-meridian, I opened Twitter. I searched for Scholar Sync. Nothing yet, just the usual bot posts. Then at 42 minutes past 9 anti-meridian, the first pebble slid down the mountain. User Study Girl 999. Why does Scholar Sync keep logging me out? I'm in the middle of bio and I'm going to scream. Hashtag Scholar Sync Finals Hell. I took a sip of coffee. 45 minutes past 9 anti-meridian. User Brad the Chad. Bro, Scholar Sync is tweaking. My timer keeps resetting, but the questions aren't loading. At Scholar Sync, fix your app. At 50 minutes past 9 anti-meridian, the official Scholar Sync account tweeted, "Hey scholars, experiencing some minor connectivity vibes due to high traffic. Don't worry, we're manifesting a fix. Sparkles hashtag vibes." I actually laughed out loud. Connectivity vibes, they had no idea. They thought it was simple traffic. They were probably spinning up more server instances right now to handle the load. But that was the trap. My script monitored the number of server instances. If server count is greater than 10, then increase the error rate by 20%. By trying to fix the traffic problem, they were actually accelerating the crash. It was a Chinese finger trap. The harder they pulled, the tighter it got. At 10 anti-meridian, the floodgates opened. The trending tab on Twitter updated. Hashtag Scholar Sync Down was trending at number 5, directly below hashtag Met Gala and hashtag World War III. My phone screen lit up. It wasn't a notification, it was a call. Caller identification Avery, Chief Executive Officer. I stared at the screen. The buzzing caused the table to vibrate, startling a squirrel. I didn't answer. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then it rang again. Caller identification, Kinsley Visionary. I declined the call. I picked up my coffee and walked inside. I had some laundry to do, and maybe I'd watch a Danny DeVito movie. I heard Matilda was good. The system was doing exactly what it was designed to do, failing the people who failed it. My feeling of detached satisfaction was complete. By noon, the internet was burning. I had moved from the patio to my living room, casting my laptop screen to the 65-inch television so I could watch the disaster unfold in 4K resolution. It was better than any reality show I had ever seen. Hashtag ScholarSyncDown was now #1 globally. Senators were tweeting about it. Senator Davis, unacceptable failures at ScholarSync are jeopardizing the futures of thousands of students. We demand answers. I checked the ScholarSync status page. It was a sea of red: database critical, login timeout, application programming interface non-responsive. The system was in full meltdown. The voicemails were piling up. I had 17 missed calls from Avery, 12 from Kinsley, 4 from Linda in Human Resources, and 1 from a number I didn't recognize, which turned out to be the chairman of the board. I listened to one of Avery's voicemails on speaker while I folded towels. Shane, hi, it's Avery. So funny story. The system is acting a little quirky. Kinsley thinks it's a denial of service attack from Russia. Anyway, we need the password to the black screen thing, the command prompt. Call me back as soon as possible, please. Seriously. A denial of service attack from Russia. Classic, when in doubt, blame the foreign hackers. I imagined Kinsley in the server room, trying to smudge the racks of blinking lights with sage to clear the negative energy. Then came the piece de resistance. Kinsley went live on Instagram. I clicked the notification. She was in the office. Behind her, you could see chaos. Developers were running around. Someone was literally crying at their desk. Kinsley had a ring light set up, and she was wearing a headset that wasn't plugged into anything. Guys, she said, her voice trembling slightly, but the filter keeping her skin flawless. So we know things are a little crazy right now. We are literally working so hard to fix the glitches. It's just that so many of you are logging in to see our new confetti feature that it's overwhelming the cloud. We're suffering from success. Bear with us. The comments were a waterfall of hatred. I just failed Chem 101 because of your confetti. Resign? A timer ran out while I was watching you talk? Who is this clown? Suddenly, in the background of the video, a loud, guttural scream cut through the noise. It wasn't a human. It was the goat. Bah. The alert sound I had set for the server overheat. It was coming from Avery's phone, which she was holding as she ran into the frame behind Kinsley. Kinsley, turn that off! My phone won't stop screaming! Avery yelled, not realizing they were live. I'm live, Avery! Kinsley hissed, trying to block the camera. I don't care! The board is on the line. They say the stock dropped 40% in 2 hours. Fix it! I don't know how Shane locked the stream cut to black. I sipped my iced tea. Shane locked nothing, I said to the television. Shane just took the keys with him. My laptop pinged. A new email. Subject: Contracting inquiry urgent from Board of Directors at scholarsync.com. Dear Mr. Shane, we have been informed that you recently left the company. We are experiencing a catastrophic service interruption. Current leadership has indicated difficulties in resolving the issue. We would like to discuss retaining your services immediately as an external consultant. Name your price. I looked at the email. I looked at the television where a cable news network anchor was now talking about the exam failure. My sense of detached satisfaction solidified into absolute power. I drafted my reply. I am currently unavailable. I recommend asking the Chief Technology Visionary to manifest a solution. If she cannot, I will be available for a call at 9 anti-meridian tomorrow. My rate is $500 per hour, with a minimum retainer of 100 hours paid up front. Also, I will require full autonomy and a public apology sent. I didn't wait for a reply. I knew it would come. The panic was total. By 9 anti-meridian the next day, the money hit my account. It was an obscene amount, enough to pay off my mortgage and buy a very nice bottle of scotch. But the money was secondary. The access was primary. Allow user Shane, consultant, access God mode. The terminal greeted me like an old friend. The cursor blinked, waiting for orders. I navigated to the vibe check protocol. I entered the decryption key. Ryan Gosling is overrated. I needed a string Kinsley would never guess. The protocol disengaged. The lockout flags on the database tables lifted. The system took a deep breath. Next, the cancer. I found Kinsley's confetti script. Git revert commit 8F3A21 enter. The confetti code vanished. The memory usage on the servers instantly dropped from 99% to a healthy 32%. It was like pulling a knife out of a wound. The patient stabilized immediately. I picked up the phone and dialed the boardroom conference line. "It's done," I said. "It's working." The chairman sounded like he might cry. "We're seeing successful login. The support tickets are dropping. Exams are unfrozen. Students can resume exactly where they left off." I confirmed. "No data loss." I've posted a system announcement explaining that the technical difficulties have been resolved and granting every student a 24-hour extension on their deadlines. "Thank you," Sterling breathed. "Thank you, Shane." "We're not done," I said. "That was the patch. Now we need the surgery. I want the contract, but I also want full executive control of the engineering department. No oversight from the chief executive officer. No visionary input, and one more thing." "Anything," Sterling said. "I want Avery and Kinsley to issue a public apology to the students. Not a mistakes were made statement. A specific admission that they prioritized aesthetics over functionality and ignored technical safety warnings. And I want it posted on the homepage." Avery's voice cut in shrill. "I can't do that. It'll ruin my personal brand." I looked at the camera. Sterling looked at Avery. It was the look of a man watching his portfolio burn. "You'll do it, Avery," Sterling said, his voice like grinding stones. "Or you'll be explaining to the Securities and Exchange Commission why we defrauded our customers." I smiled. It didn't reach my eyes. "I'll send over the contract," I said. "Once the retainer hits my bank account, I'll send the decryption key." I had already fixed the system, but they didn't know that. The money had already hit. "The apology?" I asked. Avery's voice came on the line, small and defeated. "It's being drafted. Marketing is working on the wording." "No marketing," I said. "I'll write it. I'll email you the text. Copy, paste, post. Don't change a comma." I typed it out while they waited. "To the student community, we messed up. In an attempt to modernize our look, we compromised the stability of the platform you rely on. We ignored the warnings of our technical experts. We prioritized style over substance. We are sorry. We are reverting to the reliable system you know, and we are stepping back to let the engineers do their jobs." Signed, Avery and Kinsley. "Send it," I commanded. 5 minutes later, it was on the homepage. The internet exploded again, but this time with vindication. I sat back in my chair, the adrenaline fading. I had won. The invisible labor was invisible no more. The immediate crisis was over. The hemorrhage stopped, but the surgery, the structural repair of the system and the company, was just beginning. The first task was purging the front-end repository of all assets uploaded in the last 3 weeks. No more pink error messages. No more affirmations. We were going back to boring works. I deleted the final, damning warning about the load-bearing column in the server message of the day file. I replaced it with a simple declaration: system status stable. The adults are back in the room. I drove into the office on Wednesday. I didn't have to. I could have worked remotely forever under my new contract. But I wanted to see it. The parking lot was full. I walked to the front door. Earl, the security guard, saw me coming. He stood up, a massive grin on his face. "Mr. Shane," he said, "heard you're running the show now." "Just fixing the plumbing, Earl?" I said. He buzzed me in without asking for a badge. "Good to have you back." The office was quiet. The manic, forced energy of the vibe era was gone. The music was off. People were working. I walked past the visionary suite, Kinsley's old office. It was empty. The neon sign that said, "Girl Boss," was unplugged, leaning against the wall next to a box of half-packed desk toys. Kinsley was gone, pursuing other creative opportunities, the email had said, which translates to "fired so hard she likely vaporized upon exit." I walked to the chief executive officer's office. Avery was packing a box. She looked up when I entered. She looked older. The shiny veneer had cracked. "Hair to gloat?" she asked, her voice flat. "No," I said. "Hair to make sure you return the laptop. It's company property." She shoved a MacBook across the desk. "Take it. I hate this place anyway. It's too rigid. It's an exam platform, Avery," I said, picking up the laptop. "It's supposed to be rigid. It's supposed to be fair. It's supposed to work. That's what you never understood. You thought technology was magic. It's not magic. It's labor. It's thousands of hours of invisible labor so that when a kid hits submit, it actually submits. She didn't say anything, just picked up her purse and walked out. I watched her go. She would be fine. She had a trust fund. She'd probably start a podcast about resilience next week. But here her influence was finally dead. I walked out onto the main floor. Greg, the junior developer I'd warned, stood up when he saw me. Then another developer. Then the whole engineering team. They didn't clap. We're engineers. We don't do slow claps. But Greg just nodded. He pointed to his screen. Uptime 24 hours, he said. Error rate 0.00%. I nodded back, a flicker of professional acknowledgement passing between us. I went to my old desk in the corner. They had offered me the corner office, the fishbowl, but I turned it down. The sun glare makes it hard to read the terminal. I sat down, my cactus was still there. Earl must have watered it. I logged in. I checked the queue. Finals were in full swing. 60,000 concurrent users. Everything was green. A support ticket came in. Ticket 9950. Student asking if the confetti is coming back. I smiled. I hit reply. Resolution: no. Feature deprecated. Good luck on your exam. The job was complete. I put on my headphones. I queued up my playlist. The low hum of the servers was a song I knew by heart. I took a sip of lukewarm coffee. We were stable. The invisible labor was protected. Class dismissed.